Hello!
My final guest this afternoon, as it now is Stuart Ashen. Hello, Stuart.
Hello.
Stuart has got a thing about all those gizmos and gadgets that we're all tempted by when we walk into shops or ponder around on the World Wide Wonder Web. And you put together some little films about some of the gadgets that come your way. How do you find these gadgets? Do you have to literally go out and shop for them, or...?
To an extent, yes. Most of them come from eBay in some way or another. But often I'll get emails from people saying, oh, this thing is terrible, you should have a look at this. And often, in fact, sometimes I've been lucky enough for people to actually send me things for free, which is always appreciated.
But some of these things, they promise much but deliver very, very little.
Oh, yes, absolutely. That's the distinguishing feature of pretty much everything I've covered, I think. The best one being a fake iPhone. The iPhone, of course, being the big thing.
Yeah, of course, yes, and there's a new one out recently, isn't there?
Yes, absolutely, yeah. They really dominates pretty much all the headlines to do with technology and even some not to do with. So obviously there's a huge market there. And some cheap Chinese manufacturers have been making, how shall we put it, less than competent, well, I would say copies. They are literally just knockoffs of
Yes, yeah.
They come in a similar box. They look almost identical until you hold one and it's practically going to float away on its own. There's just nothing really in it. You know? But with an astonishing array of features. It would do video recording, whereas the iPhone didn't. It could take two SIM cards you could swap between, use Bluetooth properly. If you were to actually look at it at face value, it would be far better than an iPhone, and you can get one for under £100 with no contract.
Because iPhones in this country, I think they're still limited to one network, aren't they? Is it O2?
That's correct, yeah, absolutely, and with fairly horrifying contracts as a general rule, yeah. The problem, of course, with these Chinese ones is that they don't actually work.
just a slight snag there.
Yes, and none of the features work correctly. You can take video as long as you don't want to see anything. It will cut you off halfway through calls, or three-quarters of the way if you're lucky. They come with two batteries, but that's because one battery will last about an hour and a half. The touch screen, well, it's more like a poke screen, so you effectively have to get a big pole and whack it in order for it to feel anything that's going on. The screen is full of physical bubbles, so you can't really see anything. Absolutely appalling. It really is a case of, in that well, I would say you get what you pay for, but they probably cost too much for the actual use you'd get out of it.
Yeah.
You know?
What got you into this in the first place? Did you get ripped off at some point in the stage, and you're wreaking revenge on? Well, we mustn't keep saying China, but unfortunately that's where all this stuff comes from.
That's absolutely true. That's something I'm always aware of in the videos. I always feel as if I'm sort of unfairly subjecting them to it, but that is where it's all produced.
Yeah, come the revolution, you know, you're a marked man, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely, yes. There's a sniper across the street already, I think. Yeah, it all started by accident, as many of these things do. I was a member of a sort of small internet community based around an old video games magazine, to cut a long story short, and somebody spotted on eBay a fake gaming device just when Sony's PSP had been brought out, still a sort of very expensive, much wanted gadget. Something that looked absolutely identical, even came in an identical box, but cost about £3. So thinking this obviously isn't actually going to be very good, which turned out to be an understatement. So I bought it from eBay, and to show it to the people on this in this community, I made a short video where I sort of ad-libbed as to what it actually did, which was not work properly. It only plays one game and doesn't do that very well. And somehow I thought sort of about 10-15 people would see it and that would be it, but it leaked out to Beta, which is a big internet newsletter amongst sort of the creative community. So that immediately garnered about 70,000 more sort of views of it than I expected, and it all skyrocketed from there. The big weakness was I hadn't in any way branded it, because I thought only a handful of people would see it. All you see is the gadget, my hands, my sofa, and hear my voice. I don't identify myself.
Your brown sofa.
That's the one, yes. Horrifying state, but I don't want to get rid of it. It feels like a minor celebrity, you know. So I then had to make a second one, more than anything, just to prove that I'd actually done the first one. So I actually appeared at the start and still forgot to give the website address, but that was more due to ineptitude than a lack of planning. And it sort of spiralled from there. I thought everyone would be absolutely sick of it by the third one I made, but it didn't. They've been demanding more and more for years, and it's turned into a sort of mini cottage industry for me, really.
All right. I mean, these things. I mean, I remember seeing a documentary. I think it was a few months ago, but that said that because so much stuff is made in China now,
Yes,
and so many brand names that we're all familiar with, are made in China. But as soon as a manufacturer says, right, okay, I'm shutting down my factory and so, moving it to China. I mean, within days of opening up production there, there's some outfit down the road that's copying it or making copies. In fact, they have to spend enormous amounts of money trying to track these various people down, but it seems to be a complete and utter waste of time.
Absolutely.
Because these things, these fake stuff emerges anyway.
The speed of which they turn it around is terrifying. I'm still waiting. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm sure it's going to happen soon for a big must-have gadget to be announced, and they'll actually bring out a fake one before the real one hits market. It's got to happen soon, because it's a turnaround time of sometimes days before you see these things on eBay. So they must have been planning them before the real product's even been finished.
Yeah. Some of the clues are always in the packaging, aren't they?
Yes, to say the least. They'll use similar names. So it's like the old fake Rolex joke, or it'll be called a Molex or a Polex or something. For instance, the fake PSP was called a pop station.
I see.
Pop looks a bit like PSP when it's written down. The station, of course, alludes to PlayStation. The worst I've ever seen was actually that fake iPhone. The front of the box declared it as an A88, which bears no resemblance to an iPhone at all.
No.
Turn the box over, then actually photocopy the back of a real iPhone box from America with all the AT&T logos and Apple technical information and things which were completely irrelevant to the product.
Yeah.
And grotesquely illegal on pretty much all fronts, I imagine.
Do you? I mean, there seems to be no end to this, really. And it counts. A lot of it, really, I suppose, is to do with the internet, because people are always looking for bargains, aren't they?
Oh yes, yeah. And the thought that you can perhaps not have to take out an expensive contract or pay a fortune for something, but get something with the basic functionality that you want, that looks like what you want, very cheap, is very appealing. And it's always a road that leads to pain, because you're never going to get anything good out of it.
No. I mean, I looked at some of your videos, and there's stuff that doesn't even do what it purports to copy. So you've got sort of what claims to be an iPod, in actual fact is an FM radio.
That's correct. Yep. They were quite good. They did write it was an FM radio on the package in tiny writing on the back. But yeah, it's made to look exactly like an iPod, and it doesn't play MP3s, store any information. It's just a little FM radio that really doesn't work very well.
Now, I'm talking to my guest here, Stuart Ashen, who targets the manufacturers of these mysterious electronic gadgets that fall into our hands and often don't come up to quite what we expect of them, really. We're talking about the Wii just off air as one of your targets.
Oh, yes. Well, as well you know, the Nintendo Wii has been massively popular. It's been a huge money spender.
It was quite unattainable at one stage, such was the demand for it.
Absolutely. They were going for many times the recommended retail value second-hand over a Christmas period, because, of course, it's the toy everybody wanted, nobody could get. And that led to a huge influx of various less than genuine versions, shall we say. The most famous one was something that was referred to as the Chintendo V, which...
That's close, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. I assumed that was a joke, but when I got my hands on one, it is actually marketed as the V. So literally a V instead of the W at the start of the name. And it's basically a really old games console, about the standard of something from sort of mid-1980s. With fairly...
See, I'm old enough to remember those.
Oh, yes, it's less impressive than Nintendo's version, shall we say.
Yeah.
So you plug it into your television, hoping for some sort of nice games of tennis where you get to wave your remote around, and it barely works at all. Nintendo's... remotes for them have a fairly sophisticated system,
with buttons and stuff.
Yes, absolutely. And while these look identical, they actually only have one tilt switch in it.
Yes.
You can tell if you're waving it around or if you're not waving it around, which makes the game somewhat simplistic. Because it's the same as having one button you either press or you don't.
Yeah.
And, of course, it doesn't work properly either, so sometimes it'll think you're waving it when you're not, etc. But the very worst thing I discovered was something, they just marketed it as the Tilt games, and they appeared in a lot of discount shops in America. And rather than something you connect to the television, it was just a handheld thing, just looked like one of the Nintendo Wii remotes, little square thing, but had a little screen on it for playing games.
Yes.
It's very simple LCD games, much like the sort of early 80s
the tennis stuff, ping pong.
Exactly, yep. In fact, one of them was tennis, I believe. life. And well, it's possibly the most useless thing I've ever used in my life. You can't see the screen due to the way it's been embedded in it, which is horrifying. I mean, they've had this technology for, 25 years, and it's been pretty much perfect the whole time, and it's taken them this long to make